YouTube, what's good? Senju, back at it again with another video. So for today, we are going to be talking about the Throne and the Liberty Spear and Dagger Shadow Dancer PVE rotation. Boy, that was a mouthful. So to briefly explain what's going to be going down here, we're going to go over the rotation first, just like before, because I feel like you guys enjoy that a lot more. You're able to get in and get right to what you want. Then we're going to go into the gear section, which again is on max roll. Right after that, we're going to go ahead and I guess that might be it, honestly, because all you guys really need is the rotation and the gear setup. And then just, you know, a brief explanation of skills and such. So before we get started here, let's just briefly explain my decisions as to why we are going with certain things. As you guys can see on my bar, we have Javelin Surge, as well as Fatal Stigma. Nowhere can you see anything pretty much having to do with the ignitions except for Phoenix Barrage, and the main reason as to why is purely because ignition stacks are extremely inconsistent. They proc on critical hits, and they have the ability to proc multiple times on critical hits, which can cause an issue where you can actually cause your ignition stacks to explode, or vice versa, just not be high enough to actually warrant using it with Slaughtering Slash or Rising Slash, because your damage will be very inconsistent. You will have certain rotations where you can hit upwards of 300k in under 20 seconds, and then other rotations where your damage is piss poor because your ignition stacks were exploding before you got the chance to actually use your Slaughtering Slash. So I opted to sacrifice the damage on the explosive end for a more consistent version of this, which actually resulted in more total DPS because you're not fluctuating so far between your max damage and your minimum damage through inconsistencies with ignition stacks. So after testing a couple of things and then also testing Fatal Stigma, the main reason why Fatal Stigma is here, because you guys know I'm not a huge fan of it, but the main reason why it is here is because it counts as a brand. So if you look at the passives for Fatal Stigma and Javelin Surge, you will notice that both of them say that if a branded target dies, it will reset the cooldown. Thing is, Javelin Surge is applying a brand that, if a target is branded, will give you a 90% skill damage boost, which is just increasing all of your damage by 90%. The thing is, Fatal Stigma also counts as a brand, so the way that the rotation is set up is basically so that your entire first half of your rotation is going to be under the effect of a brand, which will give you that 90% damage boost. Now, the main reason why I'm not starting off with Javelin Surge is mainly due to the fact that Javelin Surge is not a weaken effect. So it cannot actually be affected by any kind of status or any kind of application that increases the duration of weaken effects, meaning that once you do apply the brand, it is a set timer. It will basically depreciate or deprecate at that rate, and you will literally have to try to min-max your damage inside that window. I wanted that window to be a little bit longer for the more important part of the duration, so I chose to use Javelin Surge at a different portion in the rotation. So the rotation is very simple. Here's how it's going to go. You will see it on screen as I'm describing it. You will start off with your poison injection into your Umbral Focus, then into your Fatal Stigma. This is very important. After you do that, you're going to go to Gale Rush into Culling Arc. This will give you your 5 burst stacks, which is going to give you a 9-second cooldown or timer on your burst stacks to be able to do whatever you need to do that requires to have your 5 burst stacks. Once you hit your Culling Arc, you're going to apply your Javelin Surge. You don't need to fully charge the bar, you just need to get it past that line marked threshold, which will allow you to go ahead and apply the brand. Once you do that, and you do apply the brand, this is when you're going to go into your 3 stacks of your Vicious Fury or Brutal Fury, and then you will go into your Slaughtering Slash to eat up your stacks of your burst. After that, all you're going to do is basically kind of autopilot your rotation. It's not a hit whatever kind of ability comes off of cooldown rotation. There is a very structured rotation so that everything flows back into the beginning of the rotation. This is very simple. After you do your Slaughtering Slash, you're going to hit your Cleaving Arc. Cleaving Moonlight. Once you hit Cleaving Moonlight, you're going to hit Poison Injection again, which will use the heavy dagger attack, into your Mad Sword Dance, into Cleaving Moonlight again, into Mad Sword Dance again, into your Brutal Incision to gain the 20% damage increase, and then you will basically hit your Phoenix Barrage. The main reason why I'm using Brutal Incision over the Abyssal Cleave is because Abyssal Cleave requires you to hit it twice if you're playing with controller, which I mainly do, and you're only getting a 15% damage increase, whereas with Brutal Incision I'm getting a 20% damage increase. And the main reason why I'm not using Abyssal Cleave before I use Slaughtering Slash is because, again, that is a 15% critical damage increase, and after testing that versus the skill damage boost that I get from the Javelin Surge, I've pretty much concluded that the Javelin Surge will give you a more overall net positive in damage versus the 3-second critical damage increase that you get from using Abyssal Cleave, just for the purpose of using Slaughtering Slash or Phoenix Barrage. Now, after you go ahead and you do your full rotation, all you're gonna do is dance between the Culling Arc and the Cleaving Moonlight maybe once or twice while you wait on your Gale Rush and your Vicious Fury to come off of cooldown. And as you've seen in the rotation, which I'm pretty sure you guys can very clearly see, you basically reset your entire rotation all over again. You're gonna go ahead and go back right into it with the Poison Injection, the Umbral Focus, the Fatal Stigma, right back into the basic rotation. And this rotation in under 45 seconds just at your base, you by yourself, is going to net you 420k DPS. If you have Deadly Marker, then you basically have no cooldowns and you can do the entire first half of the rotation as many times as you want to, which is going to net a seriously high DPS output because you're going to have more consistent damage over time versus using Explosive Fury and Ignition stacks. And because you're going to consistently have your brand up between Fatal Stigma and the Javelin Surge due to Deadly Markers and having infinite mana due to healers with good support, you are going to basically skyrocket through a lot of this damage. Now, let's go ahead and go over the skills with the specializations as well as the gear, and then right after that, I shall set you guys free. Alrighty, we are at the skills section. So going into the skills, we're going to start off very simply. We're going to go ahead and start off with the specializations to get these out the way, because I tend to forget these, honestly. I feel like they don't play a major part in your DPS, but sometimes you do get some passives that are actually really good. So you have all of the bottom line for the daggers as well as the very important skill damage boost. However, keep in mind that if it is not one of these golden nodes that is highlighted, these are not actually active until you swap to that weapon. Now you have the poison, which honestly this is just here because I need to fill out the rest of the tree, but really you just want the bottom line. For the spear, you're going to go throughout the entire top line till you get to max HP. Now once I actually get the rest of my points, because I haven't really been grinding the spear as much, because honestly the damage is so high you don't really need to. If you choose to go the ignition route, then you will go and do the ignite flames, which will give you 10% more ignition damage. However, I'm going all the way to the end to get as much skill damage boost as I possibly can. And then I'm going to go ahead and come up here to steady charge and max out these two lines. Now for the passives, we have Murderous Energy for the additional poison damage. You have Retaliatory Strike for the critical chance. You have Mortal Wrath for the execute damage. You have Fatal Precision for the attack speed buff. Then you have Wrathful Edge for the passive critical damage increase. You have Imposing Form, which is going to increase your skill damage boost again. You have Assassin's Instincts for higher critical chance, so you have a higher chance to just pretty much annihilate everything in front of you. And then you have Assassin's Step for the mana regen when you're doing mobbing. Now for the skills, you have Cleaving Moonlight with consecutive use and additional damage, Inject Venom with Hastened Arc and Effect Duration to basically keep this up at all times, because the rotations in Spear and Dagger are actually so long that you do need to have additional seconds on your poison to be able to actually keep it up as long as you possibly can. It maxes out at 10 seconds, but you still want to make sure that you have that. Now, Umbral Spirit, we have the damage increase with the duration increase to make sure that we have this up as high as possible, because nearly everything in the kit is melee, if not everything in the kit is melee, and you want this up at all times. We have Fatal Stigma with the damage increase, Mad Sword Dance with the Mad Sword Dance conversion kit, Hastened Arc, and AoE damage to get an additional 60% of our base damage applied. Keep in mind that you need to have the spear out for this entire rotation, because the spear has higher base damage, which means all of your abilities are going to have a higher scaling due to you having the spear out. Now for the spear, you have Culling Arc with the critical burst to make sure that you almost always get your 5 burst stacks after you apply Culling Arc after applying Gale Rush to get your attack speed increase. You have Javelin Surge. This is purely for the brand, so you're going to just keep this naked. You could maybe do the Hamstring if you have extra points, or you feel like you don't need Slaughtering Slash, you're okay with the base cast speed, and then you could probably do Slaying Surge and maybe Hastened or Hamstring if you really feel like it. Vicious Fury, we have the Brutal Fury conversion kit. This is going to give you 2 consecutive uses just like the base version, but the difference is this one's going to hit 5 times in one instance of a cast versus 3 times, which just nets you a positive in your damage. You do not need conditional hit because keep in mind, this is really only if you're not getting a lot of burst stacks and you have other means to get your burst stacks or other means to proc the additional hits. But because we're always going to have 5 burst stacks, you don't need this at all. So we're just going with the burst bonus. Now, here is where you have some flexibility. Again, Slaughtering Slash, you can get rid of the actual Slaughtering Slash conversion kit and you can probably do anything up here if you really feel like it. However, I like the Slaughtering Slash because each instance of damage can crit due to it not being stacked in one cast. Because of that, you could get more damage out of Slaughtering Slash purely because each instance will hit harder on its own versus casting it and getting 3 hits and then each hit being a single damage. So Slaughtering Slash for me personally is actually better. However, if you feel like you don't need it, you're perfectly fine without running it and you can put the extra points wherever you feel like it. Phoenix Barrage, we have obviously the Phoenix Barrage conversion kit, and then you have conditional damage and critical aftermath. Now, the critical aftermath honestly is not that important. It's only for 15 seconds. I mean, for 3 seconds of a 15% critical damage increase, but it is nice to have just to get the additional damage out. Conditional damage is just, it's here for mobbing purely. You don't really need it for bossing because the only effect that actually applies for bossing is shock and you are not applying shock. However, if the boss happens to be shocked from somebody else using Abyssal Cleave, it's nice to just get that additional damage. However, we're not using Cleave, so this is purely here for literally conditional purposes, as it states conditional damage. Outside of that, those are your skills. Now, let's go ahead and get into the gearing section, and after that, you're all good to go. Alrighty, we've made it to the gearing section. Now for the gearing section, this is very simple. It's the same build as before with a couple of changes. I've actually opted for more wisdom on my build. Now, do not pay attention to these stat points. These stat points, actually, I'll fix them live for you because I did a lot of testing in the build planning to test fortitude for a different setup, which will come later for PvP. However, for this build, the 10 points that you just saw me take out will be placed all into wisdom specifically because Spear and Dagger is very mana heavy and you need to be able to sustain yourself. You need the cooldown speed and you kind of want the extra mana just in case you happen to be caught in a situation where you need to deal with certain things and a healer can't get to you. The extra mana is just very nice to have. So for the gear, it's your typical standard setup that I've given you before. You're going to have heroic polearm of the resistance for the additional dexterity and range. This is going to keep you at your 40 dexterity breakpoint, and the 20% extra range not only applies to your auto attack, but it also applies to any ranged abilities that you do have, which is very nice, including Phoenix Barrage, which is a conal ability which has range applied to it. Because of the 20% ranged increase, it is very nice to have that additional range on that ranged ability. So you're going to go for hit chance, critical hit chance, and max HP just to make sure that you do not die in PvE or PvP. Keep in mind this is a PvP build that you can use in PvE. That's how strong the Spear and Dagger is. It's just, I would say that the skill ceiling on Spear Dagger is a lot higher than everything else in the game because of how vulnerable you are if you build this class wrong. So for the daggers, we have the same thing, Liquirius's daggers. I don't really see a replacement for this anytime soon unless you maybe want to go for Darkslayer, which at that point you would need to figure out a different place to get your extra perception and wisdom. However, if you are perfectly capable of getting your perception and wisdom, you are perfectly fine with rotating these out for the additional strength inside of the Darkslayer daggers. However, for the Liquirius daggers, we are running with hit chance, critical hit chance, and heavy attack chance. For the sets, again, Phantom Wolf set with Field General. That is pretty much my bread and butter for now. I'm still looking for a decent replacement for Phantom Wolf because the bonus damage is absolutely poop trash on Spear. However, I haven't really found anything that's actually worth farming out currently because it takes so long to farm the gear. Once I find that, I will make the rotations on the set and then accumulate the points and start reordering my sets and whatnot. However, currently, because we are pretty much already pretty deep into like the first season or the first arc of Throne and Liberty, I really don't see a reason to change out the gear, considering the fact that it takes very long to get the new gear fully traded out. It's a lot of currency and it's a lot of unnecessary work for something that's already putting out this amount of damage. But again, once I find something better, I will update you guys. So for now, same thing, Phantom Wolf Mask with your Ancient Tapestry Mantle. You have the Plate of the Field General with your Phantom Wolf Gloves. You're going to run that with the Phantom Wolf Breeches. The Sabatons of the Field General, Icy Necklace of Strength, extremely easy to get. You have the Braces of the Primal King, again, extremely easy to get. Band of the Chosen One with your Sapphire Dimensional Band, and then you will pretty much end this all on the Forbidden Eternal Chain, which honestly, if you're looking for the two hardest things to get in this build, it will be these two, mainly because they drop from tier 2 dungeons or world bosses. And if you're not farming tier 2 dungeons, then you're pretty much reliant on lithographs and world bosses. Now, you can use the material transformation or transmutation system, which is the recycling system, and try to get it. I've actually gotten 3 of these through that, and I've gotten 2 of these through that, so it's very possible to get these. However, that is gambling, and I would rather just go ahead and get it directly if I could, so I could save that to just farm out a Band of Universal Power. Now, for your stats, again, you're going to have higher base damage because you are running with the spear out instead of the daggers. Your strength, your dexterity, your wisdom, your perception is pretty high. Evasion, again, keep in mind we're not running the highest evasion for this PvP PvE build, mainly due to the fact that we're combining our evasion at base with daggers, and we're not too focused on getting as high as possible because most of the average hit in the game currently is around, if you're looking at ranged, I mean, they can get higher than 1600. But if they're going any higher than 1600 on hit, you start to get that diminishing returns point, and you start to get to the point where trying to build for that much evasion is going to hurt your build so much in the long run that you're going to actually suffer in other areas. It's about as dumb as trying to build for melee evasion or melee hit when you know for a fact that melee, if you build any higher than 1000 hit on melee, it's for what? If you're fighting somebody that has 1000 melee evasion, you're just wasting your time at that point. That's the same case vice versa with ranged evasion and magic evasion. If you're fighting somebody who has higher than 1600 hit, at that point, it just comes down to the better skilled player. So we currently right now are sitting at 1700 evasion for magic and ranged. That is more than enough. When you are fully maxed out on your passives, you will be sitting at 1700. That's more than enough. You don't really need any more than that. Anything higher than that in terms of hit, and that's just the better skilled player. You don't need any more than that for right now. Trust me, I've been running around beatboxing the mess out of people, so you will be fine. 800 hit chance again, 900 critical hit chance again. That's pretty much the sweet spot. That's where you really need to be at. Any higher than that, you really probably shouldn't be fighting that person because they are obviously not thinking straight, running 1000 melee evasion. If you're running 1000 melee hit, then I don't know what you're doing. That's unnecessary. Don't do that to yourself. 18% critical hit damage. That's pretty good. Not as high as it could be, but to be fair, we're not maxed out on passives on this build yet, or at least I'm not, but a lot of you are. So you're going to have a much higher critical damage point than I will, which is a very good thing. You're just going to get more damage out of this build. Here is where everything is actually very important. You have 23% added attack speed. You have 17% cooldown speed and 34% range with 54% buff duration if you're fully traded. That is huge. A 54% buff duration pretty much keeps everything cycled. That is exactly what you're looking for. A decent cooldown rate with a high buff duration for Spear is very important. And then the rest of your stats are pretty much standard: 16k health, 7500 magic max mana. Mana regen doesn't matter, but we need as much mana as possible so we don't run out of mana. And then you have 12% movement speed, which is very, very nice due to your passives again and everything else. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe if you are not subscribed already. Keep an eye out for new content being added to the channel because I've been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals and Comp, and I've been playing a lot of Path of Exile, and I've been playing a lot of Supervive. So those videos will be coming out soon, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.